Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to today's webinar, which is brought to you by Shared Services Link and in association with Cegedim. Today, we're looking at how e-billing has taken flight at Air France. My name is Susie West. I'm the founder and CEO at Shared Services Link. I'm very pleased to be having as my two expert guest speakers today, Mikael Darphin, who is Corporate Finance Information Manager at Air France KLM, and Andrew Stinchcombe-Gillis, who is Director UK and Ireland at Cegedim. So let's have a look at the context for today. You will have noticed that over the past number of years, 4 years really, there's been an intense adoption of mandated electronic invoicing across very specific EU countries. One of the reasons for this is the huge VAT gap that is affecting, in particular, governments globally. The figure, Andrew's going to share that figure with us, and it's a figure that is alarming governments and really putting them behind the mandating of electronic invoicing throughout a number of countries. LATAM has been a huge driver here. LATAM countries have been adopting not only e-invoicing to help with the VAT fraud issue, but they've been taking it up a notch and applying the clearance model, which takes electronic invoicing again into a whole new kind of mode. So many of us in countries that are not yet experiencing the mandating of e-invoicing, we've looked at electronic invoicing as something that delivers a great business case. It's a sensible thing to have. It's a nice thing to have, and now it's moving to something that's actually becoming a mandated part of business for a lot of organisations, certainly that are operating within these countries, whereas a clearance model is now an essential part of doing business. So we're going to be studying in this session the drivers behind adoption, which I've just touched on a little bit, but we'll be getting into the detail of that, an overview of the countries that are affected so far, and a little bit of a view as to the countries that are coming up. We're going to be talking about the required process flows for e-invoicing and e-billing. And then we're going to look at the case study journey from Air France KLM, who are going to be talking specifically about their e-billing journey. All right, with all of that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Over to you, please, Andrew.
Thank you, Susie, and welcome everybody. So I'm going to talk to you today about a couple of things. First of all, I'll give you an overview of Cegedim. And then I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview of the global trend of e-invoicing and the clearance model. But first things first, an overview of Cegedim. Cegedim is an innovative global technology and services company. We supply services, technological tools, specialized software, data flow management services, and EDI networking. In fact, we're one of those organizations that you interact with almost daily in the UK, yet don't realize. If you pick up a prescription at a pharmacy, it is likely it was Cegedim software being used by the pharmacist. If you visited a doctor, it is likely it was Cegedim software your GP was using for your patient record. If you make a healthcare insurance claim whilst overseas, it is likely it's our solution that captured, interpreted, translated, and routed that claim for your insurer. And if your business actually transacts with any of our 120,000 plus customers, your invoice would have been processed through our SI network. We were founded in 1969, have about 4,200 employees globally, with over 600 of those in the UK. Cegedim has 4 major divisions: healthcare software, insurance solutions, HR solutions, and our division, e-business. Through our SI EDI network, we have 120,000 connected firms which transact over 350 million messages and 500 million direct debits annually. We support this with over 240 digitization specialists to ensure legal compliance in 65 countries. Let me introduce you now to our SI network, which provides all the Air France solution. Every day, billions of consumers around the world use sites like Facebook, Amazon, Uber to manage their personal life because they make things so easy. When you shop on Amazon, you don't worry about connecting to each individual merchant. When it comes time to pay, you don't worry about integrating to each individual bank or credit card company. It's done for you within the network. The same is true with the SI network. Everything companies need to manage commerce from contracts, sourcing and orders, through to invoice and payments is there for them. They don't need to worry about connecting to individual trading partners using multiple systems. Chances are they're already connected and in one place. And if they aren't, they can be within minutes, or they can tap into the community to find new partners. When it comes to payments, they can kill paper checks and transfer the funds electronically, or they can review their receivables and decide whether they want to offer a discount in return for early payment. SI is fully interoperable, B2B, B2G network, and is a PEPO access point. So if we have a look at the Cegedim network, if we look for a moment at our e-invoicing, our SAI e-invoicing provides both an inbound and outbound multi-channel solution, which is why Air France chose us. Here we provide the invoice capture, compliance, translate, transmit, and management. Inbound, this provides us the ability to process 100% of invoices, no matter the format, and provide one unique file format to be integrated into your ERP. And on outbound, we take that one unique file format from your ERP and we convert it to the required formats of the receivers. Utilizing the SAI network, our clients, their customers and suppliers now have a single point of connect to one, connect to all, removing complexity and cost. The SAI network maintains compliance and interoperability with a wide range of standards and mandates, providing peace of mind solution for our clients. 100% e-invoicing, 100% accuracy, 100% SaaS. A bit of a strap line there. SAI e-invoicing provides a solution that allows companies such as Air France to concentrate on their core business, knowing their global e-invoicing requirements are in safe hands. Cegedim provides a 4-tiered capture approach, ensuring we cater for the requirements of all Air France trading partners. The large volume suppliers use our SAI network with direct EDI connections. The middle suppliers email data PDF, which is read and converted with 100% accuracy. The long tail of suppliers have the choice of our SAI portal to submit and manage invoices or send physical invoices, which our Cegedim outsourced team of over 400 people digitize and extract. All points of submission ensure supplier compliance with both Air France and regulatory requirements. SAI ingests, understands, translates, processes, and then provides the output to the client in the format of their choice. And of course, we have captured, ensured compliance, translated and archived invoices. We can now use our intelligent AP workflow tool to process and reconcile. Compliance is key. It's getting bigger and bigger and more important every day. The Cegedim SAI network provides a compliant global solution. We ensure authenticity, integrity, and legibility for 65 countries that currently require legal compliance. For those, we ensure that we have the implementation of local certificates by country, management of cross-border flows and local particularities, e-archive availability, and for the 9 countries and variations of clearance mode, we ensure ongoing compliance to jurisdictional requirements. So as they change, we change to make sure that we're always up to date. In a few moments' time, Mikael from Air France will give you an overview of the process we went with Air France to implement the compliance in each individual country. Now, let me move away from the overview of Cegedim and move on to the global trend of e-invoicing, and more specifically around the clearance model. This highlights some of the findings from the 2018 Belentis report, showing the growth in e-invoicing. The actual number of invoices issued is growing, and yes, Belentis is correct, there are more and more e-invoices. You may be surprised to hear still approximately 70% of invoices are paper. The negative impact of paper invoices on business and the economy is becoming more widely understood and acknowledged, with identified burdens through processing and opportunity for tax gaps to occur, which we'll get onto in a bit. This is why business and governments are increasingly promoting e-invoicing. And regulation, here's some evidence of the growing focus on e-invoicing. The EU 2010-45 directive now provides an equality for the electronic invoice, removing the need for receipt and retention of paper originals. The EU 2014-55 mandates that over 300,000 public administrations must become e-invoice and e-procurement ready by the latest spring of 2019. E-invoicing is already mandatory in several countries, with others like Germany, Poland, and perhaps the US announcing plans to also adopt this stance. The move is obvious and it's in one direction. There are currently 2 types of regime for electronic invoicing compliance reporting. The post-audit approach translates requirements from paper-based invoice to electronic flows, allowing the free exchange of invoices between trading partners, but requiring them to prove the veracity of archived invoices for up to a decade later by means of an accessible archive and periodic reporting. In countries that have chosen the clearance model, the tax administration requires each invoice to be reported and authorized electronically by them before or during the exchange process. These 2 systems have some common features, such as requirements for invoice integrity, authenticity, and archiving, but there are also many, many country-specific requirements. So LATAM set the real direction here. The mandating of e-invoicing by government provides the platform upon which a clearance model of tax audit can be implemented, and by the tax authority. Regulatory inspiration was once the domain of Europe, yet now regulatory inspiration in the world is being led by Latin America regarding the adoption of clearance model. This is now providing those governments with real-time, tax reporting and controls, increasing tax receivables, and vastly reducing the tax gap. Here in Europe, we're still running a post-audit tax system, yet this is slowly changing with the adoption within Italy being closely watched by the European governments. Let me give you a high-level view of how clearance works. So on the screens now, you'll see a three-corner model. Typically, clearance is a five-corner model that will simplify here to a three-corner where we've got our government agency on the top there in the cloud, we have our supplier on the left, and we have our buyer on the right. So the first step, step one, okay to issue. The supplier must transmit the invoice in a specific format to the tax administration or agent authorized by the tax administration. Generally, the invoice sent by the supplier is a signed invoice. Step two, cleared for issuance. The tax authority or its authorized representative verifies the invoice and the signature. The result of the validation of the invoice is returned to the supplier. Step three, issue invoice to buyer. Once the validation is obtained by the tax administration, the invoice is transmitted or made available to the customer. The procedure is called hard clearance, obliging the supplier to obtain prior approval from the tax authorities before transmitting the invoice to the customer. Step four, validate clearance. Upon receipt of the invoice, the customer is often required or even encouraged to check with the tax authority or representative that the invoice received has been transmitted in accordance with the legal requirements. In general, the buyer generally handles the integrity and control of authenticity using things like cryptographic tools, while the verification of authorizations is done with the tax authority or their representative. And step five is the confirmation of clearance. If the buyer has used the online system to perform the validation described in the previous step, the tax authority or the agent will return an OK/OK response to the buyer. And that, in its simplicity, is the way a clearance model works. As I said at the start of this, there was a three-corner model. The typical is a five-corner where we have the vendor partners in the middle of the intermediaries there. If I move on to places regarding adoption, although LATAM has led the way, countries across the globe are now closing their tax gap through the adoption of the clearance model. So it is expanding, and it's expanding quickly. Russia, Turkey, Taiwan, China, South Korea, Indonesia have all adopted clearance. The global pace of adoption, as I said, is quickening. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is this: it's the big tax gap. They're estimating 500 billion euro global VAT gap, and the governments are very keen to close that down and get their hands on that money. As tax administrations look to plug the gap, there is a growing focus on business. The wider your marketplace, the heavier the current and potential impacts on your business. The good news is these government mandates can force the modernization of trading relationships, including removal of a level of the onerous manual management and replacing automated real-time compliance. The bad news is implementing solutions is not always straightforward and becomes more complex as your business is impacted by the requirements of more jurisdictions. For example, trading in Brazil, hey, one clearance model, that might be simple. Start trading Brazil and Mexico, a little bit more complicated. Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Turkey. As you can see, it compounds. So if we have a look at the Italian clearance model, as you're aware, Italy has adopted a full clearance model and is due to go live in January 2019. Any invoice not issued through the government platform will not be considered as issued and subject to penalties. The mandate is only for domestic invoices, with cross-border invoices already covered under existing rules. So what I'm going to do here is walk you through an example of a clearance model using the Italian example. Here we have a four-corner model. As I said, typically we have a five. I showed you three before, but in this case, we're just using the single vendor, which is Cegedim. And in the five-corner model, there'd be another vendor in between the government agency, in this case, STI Coop, and the buyer. But make it simple for today's presentation. We have the four elements at play here. One, we have the supplier. We have the vendor partner, in this case, Cegedim. We have the government agency, in this case, the Italian STI Coop, and we have the buyer. Now, step one, the invoice is sent from the supplier through to their vendor partner. That is mapped to the required format of the government agency. And in the Italian model, it's Fattura PA. That means invoice public administration. We move on to step three. And we see here in step three, we send through the invoice to be signed within our compliance module. We sign the Fattura PA and we archive that response. We move on to step six. We now submit that Fattura PA to the government agency. It is checked and then we get a notification of the acceptance or rejection. We update the clearance status in step 7, and then in step 8, we can deliver that Fatura PA, now that invoice, through to the buyer. There is another option here. You'll see the red line with retrieval option. Certain clearance models have different ways of retrieval. It can be either direct from the supplier through to the buyer, or the buyer has the option of retrieving from a notification from the government agency, direct from the agency's portal. So once we've gone through and the buyer has received it, we move on to the next step, and they send back the delivery receipt. We update delivery status, and from there, the Fatura PA is sent back into the supplier, the delivery status, and it's archived. So on the outbound process, we have multiple steps in play there. And although it looks quite simple, you can see there is a bit of complexity behind it as well. If we now move on to the inbound process, again, we're using the four-corner model here for simplicity. You'll notice though that the players have just moved around a little bit in position on your screen. We have the supplier on the left, our buyer on the right still, but the intermediaries in the middle there, the government agency and the vendor partner have switched over. So the first steps here is the steps that we just went through in the previous slide. So it's all around the submission of the invoice into the government portal, into the government agency. We move on from there. We have now sent it through to what would have been the final step, or next to final step of our last slide, is coming through to the buyer as a cleared invoice. In this case, the vendor partner is now picking this up. The vendor partner receives the Fatura PA, the invoice. Next step, they have a buyer lookup. They map that to the buyer. They make sure that the buyer is within the client list. If it is, they accept the Fatura PA. From there, they convert, or we convert it to the agreed format for the buyer. So something that I haven't really touched on here, but what we're doing is we're picking up the format of the supplier, whatever their output is. We're mapping that to the required format of the government, in this case, the Fatura PA. We're then receiving that from the government or from the supplier, and we're mapping it to whatever the buyer wants. So whatever the buyer requires in its format for ingestion. Now, if we move on to what the basics of the clearance strategy, this is something which there are far more detailed papers and perspectives on, and we don't have enough time to go into a deep level of what should a clearance strategy look like for a business. But I thought with the time we've got, let's have a look at 3 areas that are worthy of discussion. The first question is, how are we going to manage the country-specific requirements? Keeping in mind implementation per mandate with separate vendors costs on average 50,000 to 500,000 euros. There are 3 obvious options to choose from. 1, you do it in-house. There's a large cost of implementation and ongoing management. You do divert resources away from core business. 2, and a commonly used approach, find a local vendor. The use of local vendor solution in each country, though, does add cost and risk exponentially, which must be managed. And then your third choice is probably look at a global vendor. A global provider gives a single point of access and reduces business requirements, allowing a focus on core business and a management of risk. Now, the second question is, how do we deal with the increased risk and change management requirements? The successful management of jurisdictional mandates requires you or your vendor partner to implement and manage comprehensive and ongoing risk and change management programs. It's very extensive, very arduous. Example elements of a program are monitoring changes on all levels, from primary to secondary law to technical specifications and local standards. Interpretation of mandates, which often evolve quickly and sometimes significantly. Legal and technical requirements may vary or even conflict with jurisdictions, requiring an expert resolution. Continual development of a solution that meets business and technical requirements of the new requirements that have come out of the jurisdictions. Many mandatory e-invoicing regimes lack sufficient testing abilities, which leaves your process exposed to production errors and fines. You often need to purpose-build simulation environments to ensure quality. Resourcing and managing deployment program, initial and ongoing audit of solution to ensure maintained compliance. If we move on to the third and final question is, how do we choose the right partner? And everyone will come up with their own checklist here, but we've thrown together a few starter for 10s. A partner checklist should have, does the platform handle all types of invoice? Is it paper, structured files, images? Does it support all communication protocols? Does it interface with all information systems? And is it accessible 24/7 via secure access? Is the platform trusted? Is it referenceable? And very importantly, Does it meet and maintain international tax compliant digitalization regulations? Does the platform exceed my SLA requirements? Now, obviously, we would say the Cegedim site network meets all these requirements. But what's more important is what our customers like Air France and over 120,000 others are saying by using SAI to meet their day-to-day business needs. And I'll finish off with just highlighting here some of our inbound and outbound and both-way projects. Air France, very kindly, Mikael is going to talk to you a little bit further about the 3 million invoices in the 150 countries that we work closely with them on. We have quite a myriad here. We've got Agentia, 8 million, 30 countries, Carrefour, 700,000, 3 countries. So it's a truly global solution, helping resolve the global problems that are coming up for businesses within this area.
That's great. Thank you, Andrew. So let's hand over to our second guest speaker of the day. So over to Mikael, please.
Okay, thanks, Susie. So now let me introduce to you how we have implemented and how we are using Cegedim. But before that, I will do some introduction about Air France and KLM, two airline companies. So you will see some key figures about those two airlines. So 552 aircraft, more than 2,000 aircraft maintained for more than 200 customers. We are representing more than 80,000 employees. We are going to 314 destinations in 116 countries, carrying almost 100 million passengers per year and transport more than 1 million tons for the cargo business. And regarding financial results, the revenue in 2018 were 20.8 billion euro and the operating income was almost 1.5 billion euro. Now, I will introduce you to the way the accounting departments are organized. So first, on the account payable side, organized in shared service centers, divided in 3 shared service centers. One in the south of France in Toulouse for the Air France French market, one in Schiphol Airport, Amsterdam for the KLM Dutch market, and one in Budapest, Hungary for our international markets. And we are using SAP as an ERP to integrate our invoices. Regarding the account receivable perimeter, and that's the perimeter we will focus on today and where we use Cegedim, we are organized in accounting departments. So you will see below the one that are sending their invoices through Cegedim. So based in either in the headquarters of Air France for the Air France corporates, we are using SAP modules, or near Paris in Montreuil for the Air France passenger home market. We are using some products called Cirax and an in-house application. For the Air France and KLM cargo, it's located in Schiphol Airport, Amsterdam, and using as well an SAP module, and Atlas for the Air France engineering and maintenance located in Orly, south of Paris. And all those departments represent around 500 accountants in total. So now I will share with you a bit of context where we were before Cegedim. We had started to dematerialize our invoice before using Cegedim, and in fact it was back in 2009. And we had over the period 2009-2014 a 5-year contract with IATA, which is the International Air Transport Association. So we have asked them to handle our activity, and over this 5-year period, they choose 2 different partners. Well, the first one was iPayable until 2012, and the second one was bProcess. And at that time, Air France Passenger was sending their invoices. It was representing around 600,000 invoices per year, plus more than 2.5 million invoices for archiving only. And also Air France Cargo was sending their invoices, representing around 50,000 invoices per year. And later, as we wanted to move to a common accounting department, the cargo, we decided that KLM Cargo should also send their invoices to the same platform, and we had initially planned that migration in 2013. Nevertheless, IATA announced to us in 2013 that they will not renew the contract. It was not their core business, and so they decided to stop. And so we decided to postpone the migration of KLM Cargo to that common platform and wait for the replacement platform. So now I will share with you how we decided to choose Cegedim. So end of 2013, IATA announced to us that they will not continue with us. So in 2014, we had the choice either to continue with the former platform, which was bProcess, or to send a tender to the market and see which partner could be the new platform. We decided to go for that tender, and we invited more than 30 suppliers to answer that tender on the specific scope of outgoing flows. After collecting all the answers, we selected 8 suppliers, and in the end, 4 were shortlisted. We decided at the end to go with Cegedim for the main reason that you will see. First, they were already involved in the previous landscape. So we thought that it will be, it reassured us, and we thought that the delay for that migration will be, the risk will be lowered. Also, they had a clear roadmap already at that time and an existing product with some existing customers that we could share experience with. So compared to other answers, it was very important. And at last but not least, the total cost of ownership they proposed to us was the cheapest one. So it is our decision. Now let me explain what we asked to Cegedim to implement. So you will see that there are some steps. The first steps was for Cegedim to be able to receive files from different applications. 2 applications for the passenger perimeter, one file from one system for the cargo. They had to receive that and convert this file into their own file format that they could proceed internally in their platform. Then step 2, we asked Cegedim to perform the proper checks and control, as we rely on Cegedim to do that for us. We do not have internally the expertise to do that. So they have to check all the legal mandatory information depending on the country where we will send the invoice to. Then step 3, as we are sending to plenty of different countries, and also some country or customer have some specificities, there were the need to do some translation, so translation in 6 different languages, and also producing invoices in total 12 different layouts. And after step 4, we asked Cegedim to apply all the digital signature and all the legal archiving for us. Step 5, transmit all those invoices in different means to our customers. And I will go in a little bit more detail on that in the next slide. Then step 6, we asked Cegedim that we had to be able to manage the platform and manage the way we were sending invoices to the customers, and also manage the customer accounts. And at last, step 7, it was important also for us, and when I say us, it's our business and our IT, to receive proper reports and check that everything was running smoothly. So you will see now a visual representation of all the steps I have presented to you. It goes from left to the right. So you will see that on the left, files are received from 3 different systems. After, you will retrieve the controls and the conversion. Depending on the way to send the invoice to the customer, there might be some digital signature, or it might be only simple storage. And then the step 5, depending as well on the way the customer wants its invoice, we will send it in a specific way. And back to the reports, and you will see also management of the platform. And now I will dig a little bit on the step 2. I put you an example of the kind of control that we are doing in France. So that's a lot of information in the slide. You will see that, for example, we have to check some information about the suppliers, some information about the customers, information about tax IDs, and the kind of currency, the kind of document, item description, unit price. So there are plenty of information to be checked to make sure that the invoice to be created is legal, and for that we rely on Cegedim. if I dig into the step 5, I put you the different flows that we have to manage, and depending if it's for the passenger area or cargo area, they have different code. Bon, you don't mind about that. So we'll see that we are sending our invoices to our customer either in EDI, full integration. There are some customers that are still requesting to receive their invoice into paper, so Cegedim has a printer partner for that. Depending on the country, it might happen that some countries do not have regulation, so we send our invoices in simple PDF. Otherwise, we use the digital signature, and we could, but have not implemented yet, the possibility to use simple PDF with audit trail for Europe. And the last format is not to be sent to a customer, but for archiving purposes. Now I will move to the how chapter and the project phase. So you will see that our project took place mainly over 2015. The kickoff was back in December 2014. We had initially planned to go live in June 2015. In the end, we were able to do that in October and November 2015 for Air France, and we take some more time for KLM. And the main explanation is that we had to manage during the project an additional complexity to align the processes between Air France and KLM on the cargo perimeter. And the impact was a delay on the specification and build phase. And also it impacted when we could roll out the different perimeters. In this project, almost 20 people were involved as a core product team from the different businesses and also from the different IMOs and ITs. So it was quite a challenge, and in the end we decided even to split into two sub-projects, one for cargo, one for packs. Otherwise it would have been too difficult to manage those two businesses in a single project. And to make sure that all directions were taken in due time, we had monthly steering committees that was including the top management from the business units involved and from the finance department, and of course the support team of IMO and IT. Now, if I look back at the project and I try to see what are the lessons learned, the two first lessons learned are the following. So make sure to involve as soon as possible all potential business units and agree on the planning to ensure the availability during the project. And also the second one is to challenge the requirements and validate a statement of work with all the appropriate stakeholders to avoid any change of perimeter during the project phase. This is linked to the fact that in this project, we were not sure if we will manage at the same time the fact to do the migration of the legacy perimeter, so Air France passenger, Air France cargo, and to include the new perimeter of KLM cargo. In the end, we decided to migrate at the same time the KLM cargo, and the thing is that we did not imply those proper business in due time, and we faced some difficulty to have everybody available at the beginning of the project. So this is a good lesson learned, and also the initial statement of work was planned to do a simple migration, and in the end we had to manage also on the process alignment for Air France and KLM cargo, so it brings some additional complexity. And the third lesson learned is to ensure to have a smooth communication with the chosen partner, and preferably a dedicated project team. And this was very important in the project, and that's thanks to that we could manage at last to deliver the product in due time. Even if we bring additional complexity, we manage in the end to have the same people involved on the Cegedim side, and it was very important to make sure of the continuity of the experience and expertise on their side. If I share now some information on where we are now and the results. So as you will see, since the implementation, we manage some rationalization of invoices. Nowadays, we are more around 400K invoices per year to be generated. Almost half of them are sent in simple PDF, almost 40% in signed PDF, 10% in paper, and 5% in EDI, which include the 0.6% of our invoice that we send to the Chorus platform, which is the platform for the French government and French public services. Also, compared to our previous contract, we drastically reduced our running costs. Many can be explained by the fact that before we had contracted per bundle, and we never could manage to handle the number of invoices we had contracted for. And so now we have contracted per invoice, and it's easier for us to manage the cost. Also, huge improvement about the global SLA. It can be explained, I think, partly by the fact that before we had no access to the e-invoicing partner. We had to go through our contract partner, which was IATA. And so they were intermediate between the invoicing partner and us. And in the end, it was like up to several months to handle tickets, and now it's only a few days. So very happy about that. Also, over 2018, Cegedim has reorganized, and we have now dedicated resources, and it really improved the experience and the reactivity on their side to answer our question or to solve our tickets. And at last, talk a little bit about that already. We managed to implement the interface with the Chorus platform to invoice the public sector in France. The next steps, so what to do next? An extension of perimeter. So over 2019, we plan to migrate Air France engineering and maintenance through Cegedim. It will represent an additional 30,000 invoices per year and around 330 customers. And for the rest of the perimeters, it will be enhancement like new reports or new EDI implementation, rollout of new country or layout modifications. So thanks for listening to me. That's it for me.
That's great. Many thanks indeed, both to you, Mikael and Andrew. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and attention today, and we will see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.